The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the Force Center podcast feed, and this particular episode is the Andor Report. I was hoping that the noise that you would make is the sound of fighting for freedom, and it was a great pew 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 and a grumble roar. Let's go. That was beautiful.
Hey, I'm Ken Napzok, and I'm here to make pew 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 sounds.
That is right. Ken is here in the pew 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 seat. We're both in the pew 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 seat. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw. We're very excited to be here discussing the latest episode of Andor. It is episode 10. It is called One Way Out. Where does the title come from? Well, maybe thousands of people screaming it in unison as the prison break finally breaks. Also, a lot of big thematic ideas, I think, in One Way Out, which we will be talking about. This episode was written, like the rest of this three-episode arc, by Bo Williman, directed by Toby Haynes. This actual episode, once you strip away like all of the intro credits and the credits at the end, it's about 37 minutes of actual story.
Yeah.
But it was jam-packed with action, emotions about actions. A very, very full episode, I thought. Right, Ken?
It's funny to hear you say 37 minutes. That makes sense to me logically. Like I got it because I was able to watch the episode 3 times. But God, it felt longer in the best way possible. Where some, like I'll say, some other Andor episodes, I know some people have complained, wow, this is really long and boring. Ran into that a lot in my hometown this weekend where people were like, yeah, I fell asleep after episode 1. I get it. This episode, you weren't sleeping.
Yeah, no. Did Tim Carlo's socks put people to sleep? Well, there's a lot of excitement to make up for those socks if you were bored by the socks of Carlo. We always like to set the scene of kind of how we watched the episode. I think it's something to do as fans, right? Because this is kind of this isn't just like it's work time because we're going to do a podcast. We are absorbing these as fans, but also we're big proponents here on Force Center of what's going on in your life, in your world, as you relate to storytelling, sometimes affects the storytelling. So, Ken, what was your experience of watching this episode of Andor?
Oh, Matt, and you also, I got to put a pin in the, well, let's address it now. I'm going to start here. We are fans. We also are professional podcast pundits in Star Wars, whatever you want to call us. We had access to this episode, and both of you and I decided not to watch it. And we're heroes. We're heroes, everybody. No, it just this show is so good. I just don't. I want to take it as it comes to me, if that makes sense. And I had an issue with some folks who did watch it and tweeted out some real "I know things you don't know" tweets. And one was an interview that spoiled something for me in this episode just by context. Is that Jake's Takes interview. I don't know who Jake is. I don't like his takes. And he interviewed Circus, and we had to cover it for the news show. And in watching that interview, I was like, I can figure out what's going to happen with Circus's character now. And sure as bleep, it was exactly what happened. So I kind of carried some of that going into the show. So, Joseph, this may be a negative way to start the show. Folks, Barry Sanders, NFL Hall of Fame running back, anytime he scored a touchdown, he'd hand the ball to the referee. People asked him why. He said, act like you've been there before. That's a personal philosophy for me. I would like some of you get those screeners, sit on it, Potsy. Just watch them and wait. And there was too many tweets leading up to even the 5 minutes before the show. I can't wait for you to see this thing. Shut up. I put Twitter down as much as I can, but there was a big election going on last night. And that's why I was watching Twitter and I saw all those tweets. And rant, Joseph, and get into the context, but this is important.
A blinding series of references, though, I have to throw in there. Like, we have expansive lives that Star Wars love is a big part of our lives, but we contain multitudes, and you threw in a couple NFL references, Happy Days references, and all flowing together. Very beautiful.
I'm a little worked up by it. I was a little worked up because it's very important. The context of how you sit down to watch Star Wars, I do think is important. And I had a little bit of rage in me. And it's a rageful episode, so it kind of worked out. And then I was paying attention to, the elections and just refreshing, both on a national level, on a local level. And then weirdly, I have 2 people I know running Burbank City Council and 1 state senator, District 20. And I was just really invested. And you're trying to find hope in darkness, and you're trying to turn away from darkness and shining into the shadowing up your hope. It's a weird thing. And then Andor's just been so real world, and you carry it into it. And then the other thing too, there was a lot of excitement for this episode. I want to highlight that. I feel like I'm ranting, Joseph. I'm sorry. We had a great lunch yesterday, and I think I drank in the afternoon and it got me started. Grace had not seen, my fiance, my partner had not seen episode 9. So I said, I know you normally don't stay up till midnight, but watch this. And so we did. And that ending of 9, circus, Kino Loy, never more than 12. Oh, I got chills again. And she goes, I'm pissed at you. Now I have to stay up. Because it was too good. And it was too good. And we both really loved this episode. I carried that all. I had some rage, Joseph. I had some excitement. I had some hope. And I felt trapped, but I wanted to escape. And wow, what an episode to have all that in your heart.
You did not have to experience as awful of things as the actual characters in Andor did, but it sounds like you experienced all the thematic elements that are coursing through the Andor television program, and particularly highlighted in this episode. That's great.
Yes. And I got to the finish line. Yeah, I got to the finish line. I was like, damn that Jake from Jake's Takes. Sit on it, man.
Just emotionally running shoeless through what looks like sand snow. I think that's the new bit of material, organic matter. That Andor and Melshi are running through. It
looked like Minnesota sludge, or what do you call it? The slurt?
Snurt. Snow and dirt. The snow's beautiful for 5 seconds. Then the dirt and the dog mysteries get in the snow, and it becomes snurt. Yeah. There you go. No, that's all really, really relatable, really, really understandable, right? Somebody had told me, like, maybe it was on purpose, maybe there was a glitch, whatever, that the episodes were that an episode 10 was available to people who often have access to some Disney Plus screeners. And I just really, sometimes I do want to watch those. We watched the first 3 episodes of Andor, so we could really be ready to discuss it. We watched the screeners of Tales of the Jedi. I am open to it, but I love the midnight ritual here on the West Coast, and I know everybody can't do it, and I acknowledge my West Coast midnight privileges. But there's a sense of community to it. There's a sense of ritual to it, and I really, really enjoy those things. So I was very happy to wait and kind of experience this with the world. And I'm kind of glad I did, because it was such an interesting and special time to watch Andor. I think Star Wars is and always has been and always will be political from the beginning, from 1977's Star Wars. Not even A New Hope yet, and it was political. Yeah. And Andor is very explicitly dealing with issues of how do you fight back against tyranny, the different ways that tyranny affects everybody, how it kind of imprisons everyone. But there is a difference if you're, socioeconomic, situation is on the alleged lower end of the scale. It's a different kind of more visceral, literal prison that can't be escaped. All of these issues that are kind of at the heart of Andor are so explicitly political. So it was an interesting and rewarding, maybe. I don't even know the emotion. It was very emotional to go straight from myself watching like 7 hours straight of election coverage to Andor. Because, I don't need to belabor it, but my strong opinion is we're at a point in a lot of places in the world, but certainly in American politics, where certain political figures are using the tactics, the language, the intention of tyranny, speaking about limiting certain people's freedoms, gathering power, having a philosophy that's everything about power through strength. You will do as I say, as I decide, for I am the chosen, and only I decide, and any resistance will be met with attacks and violence, That is, that is such a threat, right? Yeah. So then to see Andor saying, like, if that succeeded, if that is not stopped by voting, if that is not stopped by the guardrails of democracy, what would that world be like? And obviously, many people in the world throughout the course of time have experienced that. That's why this is so real. Yeah. So I think it's very interesting to go from my own personal perspective of voting is so incredibly important. We have a system so that violence doesn't have to be a part of it, so that in theory everybody gets to have a voice, and so that we can keep working toward more and more people being included, having a voice. And then to see Andor dealing with that from kind of a different perspective is very, very powerful.
It's a big, giant well said, sir. Big, giant well said on the situation in the real world. And look, I'm in a mood this morning, but it's a good mood. But it could be, I apologize, it might be a little snarky. I would love to hear reviews on Andor that don't want to engage with politics and Star Wars at all. How are you watching this episode in this show? And I don't mean that, again, it sounds snarky, but I'm curious. It's just so exploding out at every seam. But the show remains popular for those across the board that enjoy it, which is encouraging.
Yeah. And I think for me also, it points to all of what has been political in Star Wars. I'm big on the prequels, not just being the story of Anakin giving into fear and falling to the dark side. The galaxy gives into fear. Palpatine successfully creates the illusion that there's a scary other that can only be met by you giving up your liberties and by pouring all of your strength into him, into the fear of the other, and therefore security. So like watching Andor also makes me think about how wonderful the politics of the prequels are in telling that story in this precipice that we're on of how many of us are going to give into fear and give into, I want to vote to raise a fist to everybody. And constantly be afraid of the others. I said I would keep it short, and I am failing. So I'm going to try to wrap this part of it up. Yeah. And then just to like sort of even put a button on it, for me, a powerful thing. Obviously, we're going to talk plenty about Luthen's powerful speech at the end of the episode. One of the incredibly powerful ideas in it is Luthen's perception that he is building a better world that he will not see. He will not personally profit from freeing the galaxy of the Empire's tyranny and creating the possibility of a better future for others, right? Amazing, important idea. This morning I get up and I'm going to watch Andor again. But I just really quick want to check in on some election results. And I hear this discussion of Stacey Abrams, who did not win the governorship of Georgia, but has been well covered, has built machinery in Georgia, a system in Georgia for lots of other people having a voice, having their votes count, being seen, being valued. And because of what Stacey Abrams built, that is deciding other elections. And these pundits, who I guarantee you have been up all night covering politics and did not stop at midnight or 3 a.m. on East Coast time to watch Andor, basically say about Stacey Abrams, thank God she's alive, right? It's not the same as Luthen, who I think is saying I'm not going to be alive, so I want to make sure I'm saying that. But they're I sit and watch these pundits basically repeating Luthen's speech of, for generations, people will benefit from what Stacey Abrams did. She didn't win. She didn't get to benefit from what she built, but others will. And that is to be applauded. That matters. So it was one of those moments where like the core idea that was spoken in Andor was repeated in our real world because it's an idea that matters and resonates.
Yeah, and these are ideas. I think when it's all said and done, maybe we sit back and do an Andor recap, bring in Jen, and just look at the impact of the season. I think it's I think so much of what Andor is saying has been said in Star Wars time and time again. You've mentioned that before, and it just highlights. It does it in a different way. It drills down on things maybe that haven't been drilled down on, but it's all present, and it's all in a weird way politically coming. I don't know if I want to say coming to a head in Andor, but it's just, I like that it's pulling from a lot of other aspects of Star Wars and putting it right here on a platter that you either want to eat or not.
Yeah, I think, with a lot of Star Wars, politics motivates things, but it allows you to look away, right? Like a lot of the Clone Wars episodes that are most political, you listen to the great, booming voiceover narration of Tom Kane, and you understand that everything that's happening in the episode is political. And then the episode goes on, and it maybe doesn't highlight that. It doesn't remind you of it. In Andor is just sort of like you are not looking away. This is all political, and you are not looking away from it.
Yeah. And I've really enjoyed it because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into our overall reaction. Oh, I did want to share one other thing. I got a B2 Emo action figure.
I saw that. Yeah.
I always set out my action figures to watch. So B2 Emo watched with me. He's going to watch next week so he can see himself, because every episode, my main question is, where is B2 Emo? Is he safe? Is he all right? And hopefully next week, B2 Emo will get to see himself.
And we might see him cry. Oh, boy, we'll talk about that later.
Oh, boy.
About what
Boy, wouldn't the new canon of like, oil's leaking from his ocular unit. Is that droid tears?
Can I cry now? Oh, B2.
I do not have an energy enough to lie and cry. I must choose one.
Oh, my heart.
Yep. All right, let's get into this episode. Fun, relaxing episode. What was your overall reaction? Obviously, a ton of people are loving it. Did you love it? Did you like it? Did you struggle with it? Where'd you go?
Yeah, I really did love this episode. First of all, I want to start here. A lot of you out there listening grew up with TV Guide. Some of you maybe did not grow up with TV Guide. I am a comic friend of mine named Jamie Kaler had this joke. So I'm completely quoting him. I'm quoting him. Look up Jamie Kaler. He had a great joke about TV Guide entries. And if you did one for like World War II, it would say Hitler's plans for world domination go awry. And that would be the TV Guide entry. The description of this Andor episode made me laugh. A rare opportunity opens, and the time for Cassian and his fellow inmates to act is now. Like, what a... Where does it take you to put you in that car? You got to buy this car. It just was a peaceful, simple summary of this just tension-filled. My gut was in my heart the entire time. My throat was in my heart everywhere.
Cassian and the gang get enough money for that mortgage. Yeah,
it was hilarious. Sorry, I'm choking on my own
That's
laughter.
Hilarious.
So anyways, I really did love it. And I'll be honest, at times, Andor's been, I've said this before, I think Andor's my favorite of the shows so far. It's also my least favorite of the shows so far. And there's a lot of real world reasons for that. I have grown tired of having to defend Star Wars to fans of Andor. And it's happening time and time again. And that's a different conversation. We'll bring it into other podcasts. I carry some of that into Andor. I'll be honest with you. Where I feel Boba Fett is has just as much depth. It's just in a different style and fashion. And I get it. And I love this fashion. And this episode I loved. It's my favorite so far. What does that mean? Nothing. It just means I felt this one came together so nice. Also, by the way, it's probably the most Star Wars-y of all the episodes so far. Even episode 3, or even the breakout, the heist in episode 6. This had blasters, the DH-17s. This had pew, 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 guards flying over railings. It felt like Star Wars. It felt like Star Wars is a real unfair phrase. It really is to anything in Star Wars. But this is one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars media. And I feel good saying that, but it also means I'm going to defend other parts of Star Wars even harder.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I need to really focus on the show, because I love the show by myself. I think it has great power. It has great depth. It has a great subtlety, but then it has some of its power is there are moments where it's not subtle, where it is writing the message on a stick and then hitting you in the head with the stick. And that's part of what the power is. I'm not criticizing it necessarily. That's the power. That's why people are responding to the sort of the political, the pain of what the Empire is doing to the galaxy. It's making it so you cannot look away. Yeah. But I also feel like there are moments that are just as powerful in Mandalorian, Kenobi, Boba Fett. I think a lot of those, particularly things in the Mandoverse, Mandalorian and Boba Fett, the style, the desire is to kind of state these big emotional issues in an extremely minimal way. And I don't think the goal of Andor is to be minimal. The goal is to have Luthen give a massive speech that rips his soul open like he is on the stage at the Globe doing a Shakespeare play. It's a different style, but they're both powerful to me. Yeah.
No, here's I'll explain this even more. This episode made me unmute Bo Willimon. But I should note, I had muted him years ago. It's a weird,
well, I think he's muted himself. I don't think he's been posting on Twitter for a couple of years, so you haven't been missing anything.
I wouldn't know because I muted him about 2017. But yes, and that's kind of my complications. When you ask overreaction, man, I absolutely effing love this episode. It's great. It's great. And let's just engage with that.
Yeah, no, me too. I mean, I think just we'll talk about more, but just to pick a beat out, the shot of Luthen as the elevator doors open in that dark cape blowing in the wind, like he's just this sort of inevitable power, right? It had those moments that feel very mythic, very iconic. I think Andor is interested in showing us very grounded, very real things. People, just salespeople on transport shuttles make jokes, but Tim Carlos socks. But just like the grounded, like world on Ferrix, where they have multiple pubs, and when you're done with work, you decide which pub you want to go to, and like it's both been very grounded and still having these kind of Star Wars elements of being sort of mythic, iconic, larger than life. And I felt like that's one of the things that made this episode feel more like Star Wars. It had some or feel like it was wearing its Star Wars on its sleeve, because I don't think any of the episodes aren't Star Wars.
Correct.
But more traditional Star Wars. It had those mythic moments. It had guards falling over railings. It had. I think in some ways the biggest thing is this episode felt to me like just a great big yell. Right. Star Wars often goes low so it can go high. It takes you into despair, so that the message of hope doesn't feel Pollyanna. It feels like, look at everything they went through and still held on to hope.
Yeah.
And I think because the way Andor is structured, we're having some episodes where we don't see the hope. It's just dragging them through hell. Right?
Yeah.
And this is an episode where we get to literally ascend, right? Into the light. It's a cathartic episode. It's an episode that many characters are absolutely still trapped. They don't have their way out yet entirely, but they're able to scream and shout about it. They're able to make choices. They're able to assert themselves. They're able to fight back, even if it's just the middle of the fight and we don't know how it's going to end. So that energy of, here's a little bit of the beating heart of Star Wars, which is hope, springing up and exploding. That's what got me in this episode.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. A big well said, and 100%. And absolutely all my affirmative Force Center phrases thrown at you here.
Yeah. And I just think structurally that I think a lot of the episodes have ended well thematically, but not necessarily the biggest energy beat. They leave me wanting more, but they're not like that great kind of cliffhanger energy. And Luthen's speech, about his big speech, giving it shape, ending with "We need heroes," and seeing Andor and Melshi, shoeless in the sand, snort, snow, whatever that is, as the future heroes of the rebellion. It was a thrilling, hopeful ending, even amidst this absolutely dark moment in the galaxy.
Yeah, and you felt it. Yeah, and again, it worked so well with 8 as well, but 9 and 10, it didn't have that wonderful, heartfelt, artistic downbeat ending that kind of rubs against me from previous episodes. 9 flows so nicely into this, and I feel great going into episodes 11 and 12.
Yeah. One other overall thing I want to be sure to mention, because we'll talk about the content of the contrasting speeches, right? There are 2 big speeches in this episode. Kino's, as he is talking to the entire prison, and Luthen's speech to Lonnie. And I was talking about the mixture of Andor being even more grounded than a lot of Star Wars, storytelling can be, very real world, but also mixed with this sort of the epic and iconic. And I thought that was a really great and interesting stylistic contrast between those 2 speeches, even from a writerly perspective, right? Kino is speaking to everyone. He is making kind of a speech to inspire, but his speech it's really grounded. It's very specific to the actual situation, and it is allegorical to larger ideas of hope in a way that Kino is maybe not necessarily aware of. Right? He's not a speechwriter, right? I don't think Kino in the moment is realizing when he's saying like lift each other up and climb. I think he means that effing literally, right? He is not aware of like, that was a great rhetorical spin, because it literally means pick each other up and climb, but also philosophically, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he's aware of that as a character.
Yeah.
We, the audience, can pick up on that. And then in contrast, I feel like Luthen's speech it's soaring. It is Shakespearean. It's theatrical. It does come from the writer of House of Cards. If you've ever watched that monologue-rich show. And I do, we can talk about this more. And I do think Luthen is saying it for his benefit. I think he is saying it for his truth. But he is vastly aware of the meaning of it, of the rhetorical power of it. He is spitting his truth and his feelings, but he's also saying it to Lonnie to get something from Lonnie, to keep Lonnie in line. So we have these very contrasting speeches where one is very grounded, and one is like very soaring and theatrical, but they're both inspiring in their own ways.
Yeah, and look, I love both of them, and we're not here to put anything in competition with one another. I was tremendously more moved by the Kino one, probably just things in life. And if you're out there listening, we're more moved by the Stellan Skarsgård speech. That's the correct answer too. I think it was Kino Loy's came from this place of finally making a choice, a choice that he knew he. That's the stuff about last week's episode where it's like, he's been thinking about escaping, but he's been holding on to this hope that, I don't have to, and I don't need to, and we're going to get out of here. And when all that crumbles, and now see him here was hopeful. It was very organic. It was such a wonderful performance by Andy Serkis, without a doubt. And I rewatched that one more. Again, that is not putting things in competition. Just I was moved by that, where Luthen's is complicated. It's a little more gray. I would love to have a younger Luthen 15 years ago, him making this choice, but it's all powerful. It all worked. And you're right. There's these two contrasts, and in the middle of it, can't wait to talk, you have Mon Mothma. And it's fascinating.
That's huge. Yeah, no, I think there's a power in Kino's speech. I love the theme of Star Wars that, we hear about Jedi and the importance of their power, and in the Skywalker saga, on a quick glance, seems dynastic because it's about a family who has power. But I feel like the message of Star Wars is always about Luke can't make that shot without Han Solo turning around. Everyone has power. And there's a power in Kino's speech being Andor going, you're a leader like me. You're good. You have this power. Do you want to use it? Yeah. And Kino saying, yeah, I do. So you're in the moment with him where he's making that choice to use his power, right? Yeah. Whereas I think what's to me really enjoyable about Luthen's speech, I think a lot of people do this. I want to assume that everybody does this. I know I do it, is when you have an issue that is vexing you, you sometimes are just going through your day-to-day life. You're washing the dishes, and you're running a monologue that you want to say to someone, right? You've had it with X, Y, and Z, and you are blaring your truth in your head. And that's what Luthen's speech feels to me like it's tactical. Lonnie asked, and Lonnie needs to hear it. Yeah. But it's also felt like catharsis for Luthen, because it felt to me like Luthen says, I run this speech to myself every day because it's my truth, it's my prison, it's my validation, it's my everything. It's my thesis statement on Luthen. Yeah. And this is my chance to spit it.
I love this. You have just said, you've just said that Luthen does shower speeches, which is so true. Most of my best speeches and stand-up sets are done in the shower to a wall where you're just speaking aloud to work it through, to get out what's in your head, to communicate, to figure it out, to confirm. And Luthen has confirmed things for himself for a very long time. And I really think you're right. And both speeches, I want to make clear, have huge impact. It was spectacular. But yes, fascinating.
Yeah. But they're just fascinating to compare and contrast on the intent of the character, yes. The effect on the audience based on how much the character is aware that it is rhetorical. Honestly, the different writing style of writing a very theatrical speech for Luthen versus this just grounded, telling you what needs to get done today style of Kino. It's a key to some of the big stylistic, variations that Star Wars can contain and that Andor contains.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's move on then from those were just our overall thoughts. Now we're going to get into the details about big themes, ideas at stake in this episode. I think you and I are interested in a similar thing. So do you mind if I start us out?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, there are a bunch of different thematic ideas that we've talked about that are coursing through Andor that we've kind of zeroed in on specific episodes of the podcast, because I think they're a little bit more present in specific episodes of Andor. And I think they're kind of all here, right? The themes of being trapped, themes of living double lives, having to wear masks, how much power you get from knowledge and from communication. What is the cost of rebellion? All those ideas are here. And one I've been obsessed with is this question that Andor keeps presenting of, why are people in the fight? How much for them is it about the personal versus the ideological or the cause? And the balance between people who are committed to the cause, but saying, but I still need to really have empathy, compassion, concern, care for all of the individuals. And then the characters who are utterly committed to the cause, the ideology first, and they are willing and braced to sacrifice life, connection, compassion in service of the cause, right? And we've seen that contrast between Vel and Cinta. We're seeing it certainly between Mothma and Luthen in this episode. Cassian cares deeply about people, and everybody's pushing him to like go, okay, can you now transfer that to caring about the entire cause? So it's been out there a ton. And I think this episode, the prison break obviously is huge, but the contrast between what's going on with Luthen and Mothma in their challenges in this episode is really, I think, about this sort of personal versus ideological, or personal versus the cause. Even the title "One Way Out," really connects to Luthen's speech. In his opinion, the Empire has created a galaxy where violent rebellion, where lots of sacrifices have to be made. What are you going to do? Is the only option, right? And there's this thought to me that there's a possibility that Andor is showing us that Luthen built this network, Luthen built this system, but Luthen's not going to be here forever, and it is eventually going to become Mothma's going to take this system, and Mothma's going to shape it into the rebellion. We know there's that possibility, which really raises this question of, if Luthen and Mothma are lockstep on, yes, this fight must be fought, yes, I'm willing to make personal sacrifices, it raises that question of, well, if you're agreed that the fight has to happen, now the question is, how do you go about the fight? What are you willing to sacrifice? And in particular in this episode, right, we've been talking for multiple podcasts, many other people have, about Luthen seems to think like, yep, I need to be rock hard. Nobody or nothing matters. I'll sacrifice anything. Clearly, it doesn't make him happy. He has those moments of pain in doing it, but he's committed, right? And that's his his shower speech that he gets to give to Lonnie in this episode, right? You could boil down this speech to, my dedication is to the cause, and people need to be sacrificed for the cause. I've sacrificed my soul. I've sacrificed my humanity. That's my answer. I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I will and I have personally sold my soul to the cause, right? And then in contrast to that, what's going on with Mothma is she confirms a personal line in the sand, right? Of we can get into the complexity of what Chandrilan marriages are and what exactly is being said, and how much of a trap and how awful are Chandrilan marriage traditions. That's certainly put out there for us to think about. But just getting into Mothma's headspace, that from Mothma's perspective, it seems like she is being asked, will you sell your daughter to a life of unhappiness for the sake of the rebellion? And her initial answer is absolutely not, which is this great contrast. And I think it puts this utter focus on the climax of the Mothma money subplot, which at the beginning of the season could just be kind of seen as like, oh yeah, that's how she's contributing to the fight. She's trying to find some money. Oh, she's trapped. How blatant can she be? It's spy thriller. Ooh. And now we're at the heart of it, right? Of that scene with Mothma is left with her being rock solid, of saying, I'm not thinking about it. And Davos Skalden Scumbagius turn around and going, no, you're thinking about it. You're thinking about it. Which raises this question of, is Mothma going to come around to Luthen's current perspective, right? Does she stay steadfast, which in some ways would make the show a message of, we can choose how we fight. I am committed to the rebellion, but that's a line I can't cross. That's a personal cost that isn't fair. That would be one message if she does not take this deal, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If she does take the deal and decide it is then the show is a little bit of a message of kind of agreeing with Luthen of some really brutal sacrifices are necessary for the cause. Then there's even does she get creative? Does she find choice? Does she find a third way? Does she say, what I'm fighting for is freedom. What is freedom? Freedom is personal choice. I'm going to ask my daughter what she wants,
Mm-hmm.
But to me, we're now sort of like at that point where Mothma's decision is a lot of what the show is going to be saying in terms of morality tale of what do you sacrifice for a rebellion? Certainly you're going to sacrifice some people dying, hopefully willingly, but how much of your soul do you sacrifice? How much of the entire cause's soul can you sacrifice and still be fighting the good fight? That question is on the table, in my opinion. And now that I'm done with my monologue, I apologize. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts.
No, I think it's important to get it all out there. I think we're of the same mind. And when it comes down to the Mothma stuff, I think we've seen her make a decision. I don't know if it's the final decision, and I think the show's got to answer that. It has to answer that because I think it's asking the question. Throw Saw in there. Throw Luthen and Saw in there. I think we have to keep in mind that a lot of what we're hearing and seeing is from Luthen's point of view. You and I have been talking about that on and off air. A lot of it's from Saw's point of view, and we're seeing a lot from Mon. And I do think it's asking that question. And I talk about what's at stake in this episode. I wrote two things. First, what's at stake? Freedom. I won't let you down. Freedom. That's big. But how do you get there? And the cost, identifying the cost, deciding if the cost is worth it, knowing you paid the price a long time ago and coming to terms with that. I love that line of drop of discomfort may be the price of doing business, but it's kind of a scummy dude saying it. So what is actually the best path? Who's going to make the actual changes? This is thematic conversation, but it's also conversation in the Star Wars world with the rebellion. And I love that. We might know somewhat of the answers. We know where Mothma ends up, but throw that out as best you can. This is a fascinating dive. Much like why did I love the Kenobi series? It took a story I was familiar with and zeroed in on how we got to places, how we went from one spot to another. And in that comes the lessons for life. And right now, I'm with you. The show... we talk about voting. We're all looking at Mothma to put the final vote pebble in the jar to see what the show is really truly saying. Because here's what I would love. Luthen's speech is a banger. It's a Hall of Fame speech, no doubt. Stellan Skarsgård's one of the best actors of our generation or any. I would love to see Luthen back on the Fondor right after that moment, knowing that he has condemned 50 men to, or I say men in a general term, 50 rebels to death.
Mm-hmm.
What does he really think about that?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know that right now. So his speech is looking really good. It's looking like an Emmy winner. I think he should go to circus. It's looking like an Emmy winner. But I want to know what he thinks in his darkest, quiet shower moments versus what Mothman's dealing with right now. And it's not as, you're right, it's not this, sorry, it's a Game of Thrones thing. It's not the same. Sorry. But Stannis Baratheon loses himself time and time again. And the final thing is he gives his daughter no choice but to die. And he pays dearly, pays with his life, and he pays with his cause. Now, the rebel cause is a little more justified, a little more righteous than the cause of Stannis Baratheon in Game of Thrones. I want to be clear about that. But that's the lesson of Stannis. The thing you feel you have a right to, the thing you want to accomplish can destroy you if you lose yourself on the way. And Mothma's at that point. And that Genevieve O'Reilly clenching her jaw and her neck and her throat as Davos scumbag walks away.
Yeah, that shudder. Yeah, it says shuddering in the screen captures. But yeah, it really is. And we're reminded in that scene that yep, you are kind of contained by your position. Mm-hmm. You have to be very careful about what you say, but you're also known as this kind of quiet powerhouse who gets to the point. And just seeing her visually, physically try to contain what Luthen gets to let out at the end of this episode.
Yes.
Yes. Not my daughter.
Yeah, because that's good. That's reason enough for me. I'm rooting. By the way, I'm rooting for Mothma.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just put that on the table. And I love Luthen. Luthen might be one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Right up there with Saw Gerrera, who's one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Not because I think he's always right.
Yeah,
I think
he's
there's
intriguing.
lessons. Yeah, he's intriguing. He asks questions, demands answers, and creates more. And that's the point. And I think Luthen's in that spot too. Luthen's fantastic. But I'm kind of rooting for Mothma's way here because it's not just simply her daughter and her marriage, and which, by the way, would be reason enough. But it's your very soul. Are you going to give up what you believe? Look at this. There's a reason we got this horrible marriage that we're seeing with Perrin, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just that, and there's Perrin brings a lot of thematic value to this, but I don't know. You got me thinking, because even Vel repeats the line that Cinta said to her to Mothma in episode 9, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, the rebellion comes first. We take the rest. And I don't think Vel believes it.
Yeah. You know what I think it is about ultimately in lots of ways is the rebellion does certainly require sacrifice, right? Mm-hmm. The Empire has set up a scenario where in order to overthrow Palpatine, some amount of violence is unavoidable, right? Our rebel heroes, Mothma and Bail, they try, right? We've got lots of expanded storytelling and publishing about how much they try to find any other way. So these causes are going to cause loss. They're going to cause pain. Mm-hmm. Now, as an individual walking through that, you can shut down, right? And say, that's the way it is. And I have, I've made my mind a sunless space. Mm-hmm. Or you can still feel every loss and every death. Yeah. In which is harder, in which is scarier. And in the Star Wars story so far, who locks down their heart and who keeps their heart open while having to walk through all that loss? That's Leia, right? Leia. I mean, there's a lot of characters, right? And it's Leia's like, I have lost. I'll enter the ranking competition of who has lost the most. It's Holdo's speech to Leia, and but you showed us all how to do it. You kept your heart open. Mm-hmm. You do what needs to be done, and you bear the sacrifices, but you keep your heart open. And I feel like Luthen and the conflict between Vel and Cinta is complex, and it's more than this. But Vel's trying to keep her heart open. And Cinta's basically just saying, if we have time after the cause, we could have emotion, but we just need to lock down. Clea's all locked down, right? Hey, people die. What are you going to do? Luthen's claiming that he's all locked down. Mm-hmm. And Mothma is so far saying, I cannot. I am doing this because I care. So I can't shut off the part of myself that cares.
It's not a zero-sum game. You're so right, the Leia, the eyes of Leia on Crate. That's a lot of what's going on in The Last Jedi for me, and always has been. And you look at her, her and Padme, very steadfast characters, and I think you're seeing Mothma rise in that too. And they're all on the same side, and they're all the same thing. And and by the way, this is the show. I'm curious to see where the show comes down on this. And we're racing in season 2. We're going to race towards events that we know. We're going to race towards Rogue One. We might pass the Gorman speech. We might pass all that stuff. I just think this episode really drove this all home. And this episode is about the cost. That's clearly the theme. No Way Out with an exclamation point is the title, but it might as well be a question mark to me. And there's different ways it's going to hit you different ways. It's clearly hitting you and I different than maybe other folks. And you and I might even glom onto different things within our conversation here. Mm-hmm. But in terms of talking about the Rebel Alliance is talking about the themes, to me, you cannot tell me that this episode did not raise questions as opposed to say a statement.
No, I really love what you're saying, because I feel like One Way Out, obviously it's this great chant, and beacon of hope for the prisoners. But from the Luthen perspective, he's making that statement to Lonnie and showing us who he is, that he thinks there's one way out of this, and it is to use the tactics of the oppressor to defeat the oppressor. And I think Mothma is saying, I don't know if we only have one way out. In fact, I love how loaded on every level that conversation with Davos scumbag, as we're now officially calling him, when they're just they're both testing each other and all that great stuff
great
that
banter,
is, but in his sort of disparaging how kind of old and fuddy-duddy her apartment, is. Mothma says, it's state property, and says, our choices for change are limited, right? Even that is a great loaded line where she's like, but they're limited. But I'm not going to have my power entirely taken away from me here. I'm still making a choice. Yeah. in this conversation about what we still don't know about Luthen, I thought that was very interesting when he was saying we learned that he had Lonnie, placed in ISB and is strategically giving Lonnie information about the rebellion to make him rise the ranks of the ISB. And he says, Luthen says specifically, your career has profited greatly from information that we've provided. And then he adds information that cost me dearly. Mm. And that to me was a reminder of, we kind of still don't know what that Sky Kyber means to him, but he said something similar to Andor of like, it's got this financial value and I'm willing to lose it, but it has much more value to me, right? There is the implication that, Luthen is probably somebody who was always against the Empire as he saw it being born, but has something or someone he specifically lost or maybe even sacrificed. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that the show is necessarily going to be this on the nose, but it really invited me. I don't think necessarily it's going to be like, yep, I gave my child up. Right. It is as, a rebel to be caught to Lonnie. I don't think it's necessarily going to be on the nose, but it feels like it is drawing a line that Luthen made some choice that is comparable to Mothma sacrificing her daughter that led him to where he is and said, I faced this choice and I decided the cause over everything, the cause over my soul, the cause over other people, the cause over my soul, the cause over individuals. And now he's got this perspective that that's the only way. And I think what you and I are really talking about is Mothma's choice going to validate that perspective, or is Mothma's choice going to challenge that and going to lead us into what Mothma builds, which is an alliance that doesn't take action without voting, that does say that some tactics are too far. That's where canon matters. That's where lore matters. That's where emotional canon matters. That's the rebellion that Mothma builds. Yeah. And we're at the precipice of how does that happen on a philosophical level. Yeah,
and no one here is suggesting that Mothma says, well, pack it in, let the Empire have its day. I'm not going to have my daughter get married, right? It's just so much more complicated than that, because you got this prison break, which has these great, no one is getting out. We either die here or die out there. The beautiful ending, whatever happens now, we made it. I love that with Cassian to Melshi. This is about, I don't want to say winning, but it's about this change. It is about the cause. But how you get there.
It's we are going to fight. That's not the question. The question is, how are we going to fight? Yeah. And I thought, Luthen and Mothma were the hinge of this, part of the story about balancing the personal with the cause and the ideology. But I thought it was great that Cassian's care for the people is on display, right? I thought it was a telling moment when he doesn't kill those two Imperial workers, right? Yes. I thought it was such a great bittersweet ending where he's not just thinking about himself, he turns back for Kino, right? And asks Kino at the precipice of his own freedom, asks Kino, what's wrong? In the bittersweet, like it looks like Andor's moving to be like, I'm going to give you a swimming lesson, or I'm going to come up with a plan where Melshi and I are going to carry you. And and he gets knocked off, right? Yeah. Because it's just another reminder of who Cassian is. Cassian cares about people, which sets up, his ultimate journey in Rogue One, which is at some point Cassian accepts that this cause, the rebellion, will cost his life, but he's going to keep asking himself, will it cost my soul? And that's his declaration to Jyn of like, I can't let this cost my soul. If I didn't go to Scarif with you and try to make a difference, then the answer that I'm raising now in this episode would be final. It cost my soul. I did all these things and it didn't end up mattering. It's got to matter. It's got to matter. Yeah, we know where we're ending, right? And it's the benefit of that and drilling down on how we get there. Yeah, I'm really with you because I think that Kino Loy's speech, that line that a lot of people are glomming on to, which is great. You need to help each other. You see someone who's confused, someone who's lost, you get them moving, you keep moving until we put this place behind us. None of that reeks as 50 of them can go, which, by the way, sounds like I'm angry at Luthen. I'm not. I'm intrigued by the questions this episode's asking. Yeah, absolutely. I'm very intrigued by it. And final thing on this kind of the personal versus the cause, the ideology. I really thought that was interesting that that's actually what's at stake with Lonnie. Lonnie wants out of the cause because of the personal. He's a father now, and I'm sure he doesn't want his daughter to grow up in the Empire, but Lonnie's having a similar reaction that Cassian did, or Cassian's kind of being offered, like, join the rebellion, make a difference. And he's like, no, I just need to check on Marva. I just need to run away with Marva. A really, really interesting, understandable. I just need to take care of my people, the closest to me, versus making this sacrifice to be a part of the larger cause.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting me start there, because I feel like it was I think the Luthen Mothma perspective was kind of at the heart of the episode, I think, for both of us. But I'm very curious to see where you want to take the conversation next.
I think a lot of it just goes going into the prison escape, which is just an amazing little sequence as well. I just absolutely tension filled, pulse pounding, just so well and so earned. And I'll say so earned with the other two episodes. This is why the show is doing these arc things, and I love it, and it's a rewarding binge watch. But yeah, I think in that sequence, and I think it's that. I mean, quite frankly, what we're talking about with Mothma and Luthen and everything is just attached to everything in this episode for me.
Yeah.
But the idea that these questions and these paths and choices show up when you're not ready. It shows up when they're ready. And I think I love, because we, especially, again, talking about, I'm glad these are weekly, by the way, but the binge model, I get it. Finishing episode 9, about 30 minutes before this episode. And then you got the no more than 12, and you're like, yes. And then this episode picks up with Kino Loa going, you're insane. We can't do this now. I gave you this information, but you didn't mean today, did you? And I do like that all these big questions we're asking in this episode, that we feel this episode's asking. Do you want to have your daughter be in this marriage? Do you want to sacrifice your young 1-year-old daughter? Because you're Luthen might. I think you're right, too, by the way. That's very interesting to me that we got a 13-year-old daughter here. You got a 1-year-old kid with Lonnie, great name. And then you got Luthen hiding some sacrifice, because that's the question. What do you sacrifice? What do I sacrifice? Everything. I don't know. But these all show up when you're not ready. It shows up when the choices are ready for you.
Yeah, no. And I think that even matches a line that, even though I don't like him, Davo Scumbag says about, I'm paraphrasing because I didn't write this one down, of like, I find our conditions make our choices for us often,
Yes, there it is. Our position sometimes makes decisions for us, don't you find, Senator? Yes. Yeah, so I do love that Davo Scumbag has some points to make, I guess. I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, it's fascinating when people like that show up, because even it's funny, his line, one of the indulgences of great wealth is freedom from other people's opinions. I take that as bad, but I guess some people could take that as good. I don't know.
Yeah,
I take it as
bad.
I
think it is pretty bad. I mean, I think one of the big things that's going on in this episode that is throughout Andor, but was highlighted by a lot of lines, is this idea of power. What is it, right? Because when Cassian, in the most tense post-shower scene we've seen in Star Wars, with Kino at the beginning, is trying to get Kino, like you're saying, to be like, the time is now. If you're going to do this, you don't get to sit and think about it. Unfortunately, circumstances are pushing us. They have that back and forth of, how much power does the Empire have right now? And Cassian's got that great line of power. Power doesn't panic. We're seeing in this episode Cassian's, his leadership abilities, his observation skills, his team building, his knowing when to take the lead himself, and knowing that he needs to hand it off to Kino because Kino is the person they have a relationship with. All those things are a form of power. Cassian has this power, which we've been reminded of again and again, right? This prison break doesn't happen without Cassian having those powers and using those powers. And it leads to Kino, great speech to the prisoners, which he's still, even after the breakout, needs to be pushed by Cassian. That was a speech where Kino was feeling his own power, because his leadership is a power that he can choose to use. And the speech was about empowerment. I mean, that was another thing that was, it would have always hit me this way, but it hit me extra hard because I watched this on election day. That was a literal, physical, how to handle a prison break, everybody speech, but it also read as a let's get out the vote speech, right? I mean, Wherever you are right now, get up, stop the work, and not get out of your cells, drive somebody to the polling place, take charge and start climbing, literally take charge and start climbing. It's just so poetic without being over the top, if we can fight half as hard as we've been working, we will be home in no time. It's just a rousing speech of we're all connected. We're all in this together. Let's try to be in this together. You have power as an individual. We have even more power as a group. All of it to me really is about power.
There's more of us, Paul. There's more of us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a repeated theme for a reason. It was done in such a wonderful way because we all knew a Prison Break was coming, right? Because the trailers showed it, by the way. But the way they got there, that's the value. How you get there in these stories. I love that it was tension filled. I didn't know who was going to die. In a weird way, I like a rest in peace. Who's our friend that went down first? Burnock, a true believer, man. Rest in peace for Burnock, and dies unceremoniously. You don't even see his face. Blaster shot, boom, gone, done. But yet this sequence went beyond just a prison break, a thriller. It went to rousing, inspirational, important. I took more from this stuff. Again, man, I love you, Luthen. He's been my favorite so far. But that line, you need to help each other, man, that has more real world resonance for me right now. And that's why I just love that sequence over and over and over again. I watched it.
Yeah, no, it was really powerful. Really, even tension. I was kind of like, well, okay, when I watch it again this morning, how much tension is there still going to be? And the answer is lots. For me. Yeah. I thought even with Mothma, we've talked about that scene a lot, but that scene also felt to me all about power, right? Because Mothma has a lot of power. She has wealth, which is a kind of power. She has political station, which is a kind of power. We've also spent a lot of time this whole show seeing the different ways that she's trapped by the Empire, by what this episode makes even more clear of the old traditions of Chandrila. But she is still, and she's coming to Davos Scumbag because he has a kind of power that he's flaunting, right?
Yeah.
And that scene could have ended up being her giving into something, right? But it was a scene about power because at least for now, without any doubt, without any pause, she said no and get the F out of my house. Right? I mean,
almost if she says power doesn't panic and I ain't panicking, kid. Get out of here.
Yep.
Kick
power.
rocks.
I mean, and obviously she is, in a state of terror about how she's gonna figure it out, right?
Indeed.
But when a line like, oh man, I'm trying to even look up what was like, Tay will see you out. Like, just like never more than 12 has now become like one of the most powerful quotes you can see. Like, Tay will see you out is now like I'm going to say that anytime I need to emotionally say, get the F out, is Tay will see you out.
Now, one of the things I love about this sequence too, I love the themes that we're pulling out of here, and I think you're right about them here, but it's a great line from Davo. And I did not look up the actor. Though I'll tell you, for a second, I thought it was Stephen Delane, Stannis Baratheon, but more Stephen Delane when he played Thomas Jefferson and Sean Adams. It was a weird moment. I was hoping he was in the show, but I did not look up the actor's name. He was wonderful. One of the things I love about it is when we had the idea of Davos Skolden, an underworld kind of guy. I don't know. I had this thought of like, is Hondo Anaka going to show? Not Hondo, but like that type of like, flamboyant scoundrel because it's Star Wars and they went the other way. They went the Star Wars elite, the Chandrilan dress and an old stuffy guy, which makes him more dangerous. I really love that choice there. He had this great line: people such as yourself, people with immaculate reputations, sometimes feel that by taking advantage of the opportunity, they're somewhat tarnished. And I think that was as a truth for Mothma, that she weighed and went, kick rocks, kid.
Yeah, no, everything he's saying is sort of situationally true, right?
Yes,
he's laying out the problems correctly, but he's laying them out in a way to remind her that, in his opinion, he has so much power over her. It's the whole thing is a power game, right? It's not just the ask for his son. That's clearly what he wants. That's why he wants to see her in person, because he wants to look her in the eye and says, everybody says you're real powerful. I'm going to show you that I have power over you, Richard Delane plays Davo.
It's got to be, what? That's got to be a brother then. Hold on.
Richard Delane. All right. Oh. Hey, everybody, pause in podcasting for some
gotta
IMDb gang.
I'm looking this up. He's got to be a brother, a cousin, or something there. His brother, Stephen Delane. It makes so much sense now.
Is Stephen Delane?
Stephen Delane is Stannis Baratheon.
Your beloved Stannis? Well, no wonder they're... Well, look at the Delane family is just great at playing likable a-holes.
That's amazing.
Absolutely
I should have looked
amazing.
it up last night. I was still worried about Kino swimming, so I didn't look up the credits. That's amazing. He looks just like Stephen Delane when he played Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. Amazing. Hey, turns out people have brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and turns out I've seen Richard Delane and everything from Doctor Who to Outlander. Just a great character actor, clearly.
What a great Force-Center moment. Did they look up the cast list before they recorded? Nope, they didn't.
Hey, man, I got 6 pages of notes, but every once in a while,
most of the time we do. Yeah.
At this point, I have. I'm even going to scan. I have 3 pages worth of just names and places in Andor. There's so many characters, many of them. Rest in peace.
That's amazing.
We talked a little bit about the games of power, and we haven't got a chance to talk about Dedra a lot because she's had kind of a smaller role this episode.
Yeah.
But I really think an interesting thing is going on with the little scenes we've seen of Dedra. There were big scenes for Dedra last episode.
Yeah.
But there's a thing going on with her where she is she's going up in the world in the ISB, right?
Yeah.
But there's a classic kind of Star Wars dark side thing, right? Of she is not able to enjoy her success or her power because she is terrified of keeping it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the power of conviction. It's not the power of soul necessarily. She obviously has skills and talents, and they are aiding her. But what she is grabbing towards is institutional power that can be conferred to her by Daddy Partagaz and all the daddies and mommies higher in the imperial chain, right? It's a real light touch, but I think it's building, right? There's that awkward moment last episode where her attendant, who used to kind of be her confidant, jumped up and answered a question for her, right?
Yeah.
And she didn't like it, right? And then this one, she tries to hand Daddy Partagaz her data pad, and he doesn't really care. And he's playing with her. He's playing with her by agreeing with Lonnie's successful suggestion, and she just kind of storms out. So we're seeing this power dynamic with Dedra where we know that she has no compulsion about fulfilling imperial ideology. Torture, murder, lies, it's all fine. We know that truth, but we still don't know why. Does she believe at all? Or is there anything personal motivating her? Or is she just this is the system I was born into, I don't question it, this is the game and I play it the best, period. We still don't know these things, and the fact that we are watching her ascend and spending time with her, mostly being nervous about losing any of the ground she's gained, is a powerful statement about power and about how different ideologies reward you, good, bad, or otherwise, about how they pursue it. You know, Luthen, Vel, Cinta, Cassian, eventually Mothma, they're all fighting to free the galaxy from tyranny, and Dedra's just trying to bring the boot down harder, and she doesn't look like she's having a fun time with it.
No, not at all. I'm glad you brought this up because I love the Partagaz moment where he's just like in his wonderful trench coat. It's a great trench coat.
He was at brunch, right?
Yeah, he was at brunch. It was raining, of course, at Daddy's help, because I think there's even rain. That the great scene with Dava, there's like rain on the windows. I love the little detail. So he shows him a trench coat, and that data pad. Look at my iPad. No, I don't care. It was fascinating, and
it was almost that's a cute drawing. We can put it on the fridge.
What did you
now to real business?
You got an Etch-a-Sketch there, kid. It's fantastic. I love that you brought that up because Vel has this great line last week with Mothma about choice, right? About the side. And you know, let it be known, Mothma's chosen. It's okay to be like, did I choose right? Man, this is tough. I think it's okay to ask questions. And Mothma was asking questions. Even good old Lonnie in his red hair is asking questions, but in his stash. But Val says we've chosen a side we're against the dark side. And this is a show that does not bring in the Force. Everyone's applauding that. Yay, no Jedi. Get those stupid Jedi out of stupid Star Wars. But this show is still dealing with the light and the dark. And the dark side destroys, light side builds. That's not a new theme here. And Dedra Mero, and especially with some of the interviews now out there, gosh, everyone stop talking. Just get on the shows and write the shows and stop talking. But this is a fascist. And yeah, we're rooting for her, because if you're tuned into the struggles that a woman might have in a workplace, and you look around and you realize she's the only one. I used to not be tuned in that stuff, and one time in Screen Junkies, I'm not an effing hero here, but I looked around a meeting at Screen Junkies with like 40 people. There's 2 women. Well, this doesn't seem right. When you're tuning into that, you do start rooting for Dedra. Sorry. You do, and it's designed that way. And to have it come to this episode where it's like, great, but you're not rooting for her now because she's horrible with Bix. She's all in. And what is her sacrifice? Nothing. A pay raise, a power grab. And Blevin's not in here. He's gone. He had all the power. Yep. He's gone. And there's a great moment when Lonnie is pitching what you're just saying, undercutting her. We should do what we normally do. Watch it again, folks, if you haven't seen the episode again. He gives a look to Partagaz that you're like, you yelled the Hux line, I'm the spy, it's me, I'm the spy. And I didn't see it the first time because you're looking at all of the things. And it's not just a reveal, an Easter egg. It's just like, wow, he's got something to lose. And it's a different energy. His life, his kid, he's got something to lose. He's fighting for something bigger. And her energy is exactly what you're describing. The dark side destroys, and I'm climbing, and there's nothing I can never stop climbing, because that's the game I'm in.
Yeah, and I think that's the power to me of, like, Dedra's going on Vader's journey, right? And this is the mystical story of the dark side, but it's also the nuts and bolts story of the actual philosophy of authoritarianism and tyranny, right? Of the stated goal when everybody applauds for the creation of the empire as the others won't get us. We're going to be really strong so no one can ever take anything from us. So if the philosophy you're all buying into and all agreeing is someone is always trying to take your stuff, you should always be afraid of that, and you should always be willing to attack. That's not a philosophy that is going to cause people to come together, because by definition, it's all great when you're in the moment and you're cheering and you've all identified, sure, the separatists are the others. But now here in this office, everyone you work with is your other. That Hurt, her attendant Hirt, that was her confidant that she could let down her guard and take aspirin in front of. Now he's the other that she has to fight, right?
Yeah.
Star Wars is so great at exposing the pain of a philosophy that is all about having power and being afraid to lose it, because it makes you be alone and makes it so you can never enjoy what you do have.
It makes you lose who you are. And
it makes you turn on everyone.
Yeah. And what is
eventually?
What is that worth?
Yeah. Anyway, this is what's great about Andor, of like really trying to be like Star Wars lays these ideas down, but Andor's digging in, you know?
Yeah.
I do just want to take a moment to hear your reading of Mothma marriage stuff, right? There's kind of a discussion of the nature of Chandrilan marriages, of Davo kind of being like, yeah, they're this kind of creaky old tradition, but at least everybody knows where you stand. Mothma kind of plays along. Then when Davo's like, well, what's the big deal? It's a Chandrilan tradition. You don't want your daughter to follow that. And Mothma's fiery. What makes you think I approve of that tradition? That stuff's all relatively clear. Her marriage clearly isn't happy. She doesn't want her daughter to follow that path. But there's a specific interchange, right, where Davo throws out, I've met your husband several times. And Mothma says, I'm sure. And he goes, oh, we're not going to talk about that. Nope, we're not. How did you read that? I felt like there was some ambiguity of does that mean since Davo is a thug as Mothma calls him, but a little bit of a gangster scoundrel, maybe running various businesses of ill repute. Did you take that as Mothma saying like, yeah, I know he runs around behind my back doing what with Davo?
First of all, I thought maybe they just had an open marriage. I don't know. No,
I think that to me that is one of the things on the table.
Okay.
I feel like it was really open ended. Of like, I am very well aware, because he even responds of like, well, it's at least good to know where your boundaries are. I felt like it was maybe saying like, yeah, but it's good that you know that that your marriage is a political arrangement.
Yes,
and there's no love in it, and I know that I don't actually even. I mean, I do care. I'm intrigued, but like. I feel like what is ultimately being said is it doesn't matter if parents having an affair with Davo, if parents going to a brothel owned by Davo, if parents sinking money in Davo's casino, or if parents investing in the Star Wars version of NFTs, whatever he's doing that Mothma doesn't agree with. It's the fact that this is a marriage where Mothma is aware that we are not aligned on who we are. This is a strategic partnership I was forced into when I was a child.
Yeah. I think I go to that in a lot of ways, and I agree with you on some of it. It just seems like, even go back to some of the early conversations of parent kind of being like, I don't even know what you're doing. Like, oh, that must have so embarrassing for you, parent. It's just, but the idea that is this old custom, it clearly arranged that the being betrothed seems to be, it's almost very Game of Thronesy, isn't it? Or medieval times. I think it's played that way, and there's such a sadness into it and such a loss of agency. Even though there's some references to Perrin being a firebrand of the academy, and maybe early on, two attractive people get locked in a room, spin the bottle. Maybe things are good for a bit. You can make it work, and then it's such a hollow thing. I think that's it's just so sad. On a simple level, and it gives deeper levels of choice and agency and everything with Lita. Why she wouldn't want to put her and at this point at 13, Lita's at times not the best attitude, but I get it.
Yep. Understandable. Not growing up in a happy environment, and now I want to see the ancient Chandrilan tradition of spin the squig. You have to spin the little worm thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Very disturbing. So, what are any other ideas or themes that you want to explore in this episode?
I really do think I dumped all of them on the table and we pulled them out quite well, but. A lot of it. The one final big question I have is what I love that this episode has done is just, what's the best path? We all know it's heading one direction, but who's going to make the actual changes is important to me. It's important to figure that out. It's important to not just have a cause, but to what's the end game? How do you get there? And I think this episode puts a lot of ideas out there that might speak to a lot of us on a different level. And I love that it did that. And this is one of the things the show is doing really, really well. I always say there's no gray areas in Star Wars, but it doesn't mean there isn't gray periods and gray eras and gray questions that you have to ask yourself. At the end of the day, you'll get some answers. And this episode is putting a lot of paths out there in front of you and saying one way out. And I'm fascinated by that. It's going to be a rewatch for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this question goes through many, many parts of Star Wars of, whenever characters retreat and decide not to get involved, the answer usually comes around like, well, but you should find a way to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be involved, which then raises a question of how do you fight without losing your soul? It's so much what's going on in Last Jedi of Luke, Yoda basically telling Luke like, we're going to lose Rey if you just don't do anything. And Luke's finding a way to be like, this is the way I can do something that makes a difference, that I won't lose my soul.
Yeah. Yep. The how.
Yeah, lots of great stuff. Last thing I want to mention is, I think it's been throughout Andor, you've brought it up a lot of episodes of like the double lives, the masks. So there's a lot of masks in Hidden Identity in this one. Obviously, Lonnie being a double agent, even Luthen's line about it of what Lonnie sacrificed, a double life every day, a performance. Yeah. Great stuff. It was really, really affected by the Wizard of Oz moment with the voice of God in the prison.
Yes,
right. Like
I wrote that down too. Yes,
right. I mean, it was just in the credits as voice of God, right? It's always saying this, like, do this or we will randomly slaughter you. The floor will become death, right?
Yes.
It's terrifying, and to make people feel like this is too large for me to fight. It's not a person. It's not an individual. It's nothing that can be hurt or reasoned with. It's God. It's truth. It's power speaking to me, reminding me that my choice is gone,
Yeah.
So to take all of that and transition directly from all of that voice of God to being, I don't know how old that actor is, but to me that actor was perfectly cast to look like a 26-year-old that is an assistant manager at Dairy Queen, right? Like, just not to take the person's power or agency away, but just a person like all of us, not this heightened, epic, mythic, unstoppable, all powerful voice of God, but a guy, I thought that was such a powerful version of the Andor theme of double faces, true faces.
Yes. This I do know. It's Martin Ware who's the voice, and I do believe he was the actor. He's actually in casting. He's a cast, and he needed to go work on the show. But it was fantastic, and I'm glad you brought this up because I did. And we, in our pages and notes, I want to highlight, we didn't know Richard Delane, but we have a lot of notes on other things. I put the voice of God was one scared man. And and we're going back to Wizard of Oz. Andor is just putting themes that have been out there since Judy Garland sang. And it was very powerful to me. The reveal of that is very intentional because you hear it, and it's intimidating. And once that voice says on program, everyone goes to on program. Grace and I are trying to figure out why Cassian can't interlock his hands behind his head, but that's a different conversation.
I feel like it's defiance.
Defiance.
Like, okay, I will touch my head, but only this much.
We're wondering if Diego Luna has a shoulder problem, but that was an intentional reveal to me in such a wonderful way. And you're absolutely right. Here's an episode that's asking you, all right, so you've chosen the fight, you've chosen the cause, you've chosen why, and we're going to ask you how. And a lot of fears in front of all those questions and steps. And you got them, and you got the guards who we had met at the beginning who, we'll take you. You want to see it? That's only level 1 of 3. We're going to destroy you. And they're cowering with shh in a supply closet. Powerful imagery.
Yeah. And I like that the different people are kind of coded differently in the prison, even the Imperials, right? The guy with the zap rod who loves telling people about his zap rod.
Yeah.
The guy who gave the speech when Cassian first arrived, it seemed to be, luxuriating in the cruelty and the power, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
These two were coded as like they're trapped too, right? They're doing their job, and not that excuses them. They pressed a button to kill 100 people. They have to be responsible for that, but they didn't come across as like true believers, right? No. Or that they're just trapped in this system. And again, I want to be really, really careful the way I say this. I'm not absolving them of moral responsibility for pushing a button to kill 100 men. But just the way they were, it could have been a different scene if they were like, you rebel scum, right? The fact that they're just like,
I think you're right. Yeah, good stuff.
Complexity. And final thing, we've talked a little bit about Luthen, but I want to be sure to share. I think part of what was powerful about that scene was not just his speech, but the idea that this is Luthen with the mask off. This is Luthen as he truly, 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 deeply is.
Yeah.
We've already seen him. We met him out and about in the galaxy, making deals, convincing Cassian, barking orders at Vel. But to see this real direct connection between him and the classic villains of Star Wars, right? He is in the bowels of Coruscant, not the specific same places we've seen Darth Sidious meet people, but the kind of places that Darth Sidious meets people. The way that elevator door opens to a powerful figure in a dark billowing cape, that's Vader, right? I mean, he was so coded as I have, and it's not me saying it. It's him saying it. I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. So I just felt like it's like truly mask off.
Yeah.
Truly seeing Luthen the way Luthen sees himself. And ever since he popped up in the trailers, I've been like, cool, this character's interesting. I can't wait to learn how he's different from Saw.
Yeah.
And we saw some of that last episode where he's a little bit more pragmatic. He knows that you got to work together and share information and, build a consensus. But this episode had a different answer of, he's self-aware Saw.
Yeah.
He's Saw who is really, really looking at all of his choices and
he knows them.
Feeling them.
He knows them. Yeah. It was a big theme of the episode is what is the cost? He has asked himself that 10 times over.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the cost? Well, the cost of us talking about this is a long podcast. So we are going to take a quick break unless you have anything else to add, Ken.
No, sir.
All right. We are going to take a break and we'll be back in a moment to talk about canon, action, whimsy. We'll see. Back in a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion of episode 10 of Andor, One Way Out, ? We put the question mark there. It's not official. Not official Lucasfilm question mark there. We are going to get into talking about any of the canon surprises or fun connections, some favorite action moments, favorite moments of whimsy. We will see. We go first to any big canon surprises or fun connections. Ken, I really only picked up on a couple things. Maybe there's some real deep cuts that I of course, could have missed. And almost more emotional canon than, hey, we recognize that alien or that planet. I thought it was really intriguing, and I'm very curious your thoughts on it. Of obviously, there was a dynamic with Cassian in Kino where Cassian could kind of try to fill the leadership void, but knew that in this circumstance, the people needed Kino's leadership, right? We see that in the early scene when Cassian's telling them what's going on, but they're not going to believe it until they hear it from Kino, right? And then Cassian encouraging Kino, to be the voice of God and say, you have to be the one who makes the speech. But then within that, there's a fascinating moment where Kino, looking to inspire, uses Cassian's words that he said to him, right? He says, I'd rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want. And you know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
We have often talked about, sometimes even joked about how, Jyn Erso deserves credit for a million things, but she always gets credit for the quote, rebellions are built on hope. But what she is doing is repeating what Cassian said to her. So you have some canonical quote sharing going on. How did you feel about all that?
I wrote that down as well. It's so awesome because first of all, we'll see what maybe we'll read Nemec's manifesto. Maybe Cassian got it, some of the stuff from him. All right. I had a reaction to it because number one, it's great. I think it speaks to Cassian as Keith Kirgo, whatever, as a leader, as an inspirational person, and a perfect fit for the rebellion as we know it. Later on, I think that's a testament to his strength, and I think that's a good way to look at it. So you have a lot of great quotes that I love throwing out there, and I've created a bumper sticker or two. I'm not saying I'm a leader, but it happens. But it's hilarious because I noted down, it's like everyone keeps stealing from this guy.
Yeah, but it almost feels like that's where Cassian is more comfortable. We know he's heading toward being a spy, right? He has leadership skills, right? But it's not where he wants to be, right?
Yeah.
I love that as just like a Cassian Andor, hero of the rebellion, espionage master, a secret speechwriter for the rebellion.
Well, and it's important to note, I think too, we're definitely having some fun with this conversation, to be clear, but Kino makes eye contact with him as he says it, right? It's as if to say, I get you now. And maybe I got you then, but I'm feeling it now. And I'm making this choice thanks to you and with you and together. I think that's all true, as well as kind of funny.
Yeah, no, I'm having a sense of humor about it because we got to find some comedy in brutal old Andor, the television show. But I agree, and I think that's what's going on with Jyn too, right? When Cassian first says that to her, she's coming at things from such a pragmatic perspective of like, you took me in here with this plan that has tiny, horrible options for success. And he's like, yeah, that's the whole deal. Right.
Yeah.
And then her experience brings her to believing that. Right. And so both Jyn and Kino aren't just like, I got to copy off his homework. It's a sign that they have come to truly believe and understand what he was saying to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So very well said there. We get Cassian. This is one of the few moments where I feel like Andor is, accidentally talking to fan theory websites. When Cassian says, whatever we're making here, it's clearly something they need.
Yes, thank you.
You and I have not gone into the, is this going to be a, canon reveal of that? Those are the interior leg joints for AT-ATs. We haven't dove into that. Did you feel like that was real light touch? Ironically, Cassian's building parts for the Death Star.
I do. Yes. So, and we joked about it after episode 8, where a couple people had asked me, and I said, I think what they're making in there is hope. I think Steve Ellis of Black Series I want to shout out Rick Villanueva said, I tweeted out the same thing too. And yeah, great Star Wars minds think alike. I'm not a great mind. I just blubber around here enough to say right things. But I still think the answer isn't important. But I do kind of think that makes a lot of sense, because those are big parts, right? they're not making AT-AT feet. Maybe those are big too. Maybe it's what makes the ankles work on AT-ATs. But yeah, I took that. But also, again, I really do think, and I don't think the show's saying that, but it truly doesn't matter. They're making machinery for a tyrannical fascist regime. That's all you need to know. But I do think it would work for me even if that was revealed. It'd be, I don't want to say fun detail, but it'd be an interesting detail.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it kind of, I'm glad it is not falling into the category that some people call, Easter egg. I think a lot of the connections that happen in Star Wars are rich and meaningful, but I also recognize that there's a good chunk of fans who feel like, not everything needs to be sort of connected or pointed out, or, Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen. I recognize that. I understand that there's an exhaustion for that kind of thing that sometimes I think stops people from enjoying or maybe, digging deeper on an episode. So I'm glad it's not there. I'm glad it didn't pan to a shipping crate that says headed for the Death Star above Scarif,
Yeah, ship to Scarif. Yeah.
Ship to Scarif for tyranny, But I do like it kind of from, you can kind of invest in it in a more, Greek tragedy, Shakespearean irony way, right? Of he's being made to build the thing that he is destined to help destroy, just like Galen in a certain way. Galen's a little bit more involved. But I also just do like the picture that it paints, because if it is the Death Star, right? Luthen's plan is to keep punching the Empire in the nose to get a reaction out of them so the galaxy can see how awful they truly are, right? And if potentially, with all these sparks of rebellion that are happening around this time, one of the reactions is, Palpatine being like, no, Death Star now, we're going to push it. There's a real conversation in Andor of like, this is too far for the Empire. They're desperate to contain this. They can't spin this. They're worried about their ability to spin this. If the galaxy finds out people are being arrested for literally nothing, like Cassian, and then forced into slave labor until they're murdered, if the galaxy finds this out, that's a problem. So the idea that Palpatine is taking a risk because he needs that big, fist in the sky that's going to control the entire galaxy through fear, and he needs it as soon as possible, then it's not just like the Death Star. I know that from Star Wars. Then it's a part of the story. It's that what the rebellion is doing is causing this reaction from Palpatine, that he is taking these risks to accelerate.
To move it up, and then even the pressure of, Krennic, your project's failing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's clearly something they need.
Yeah.
Last thing for me is just, going to the lower levels of Coruscant, and that terrifying rickety elevator to go way down in the depths. It was cool to both see something that we know from lots of parts of Star Wars of the lower levels of Coruscant, but to feel like we went maybe even deeper. Was really cool. It didn't have any great, obviously there's the pretty straightforward, let's descend to see, go to the bowels and see where true Luthen lurks down here in the darkness as he must plot to bring sunlight later. it all tracks on a thematic level. But in terms of like a canon level, did you get anything out of seeing Coruscant?
I always love it. I've been enjoying everything on Coruscant. I've been enjoying the Senate chambers. It's really fun, and to go deep. I know at one point he said press 215. I don't know if that meant level 215 or not. I don't know. But I think it's fascinating. And as far as the thematic reasons, I almost heard Saruman warning Gandalf, you know what the dwarves dug up. They, dug too deep. So there you go. There you go. I'm misquoting Saruman there, but it reminded me of that a little bit. Yeah, but no, it's fascinating. Look, man, I hope to one day see level 1. I don't care. 1313, neat, whatever. It was a video game that almost happened. Bounty hunters hang out there. Cool. I want to go to 1. So if that was the lowest we've seen, it's exciting.
That is great. Did you pick up on any other sort of canon details?
Well, there was this thing, and I please someone check on Tony Gilroy. They had blasters in them again this episode, and like actual Star Wars blasters firing blaster sounds. I hope he's okay. And we talked about it last time out, or last couple episodes. I mistakenly put them in the Empire. It shows how many trivia questions I can get right these days. But the DH-17 blasters, which of course most associated now with the Rebels, is the correct way to look at it. But wasn't it kind of fascinating, whether intentional or not? But yes, I am poking the bear a little bit with Tony Gilroy. I know. Here's my problem with Gilroy. I really truly believe he's become more of a Star Wars nerd than he wants to admit. And I'm just like, dude, buy the T-shirt. Get the hat, go to Galaxy's Edge and get a Ronto wrap because you're a fan, man, and quit trying to act like you ain't. And quit trying to tell Toby Haynes that you can't put an alien in the foreground. Star Wars fans will freak out. Like, you're a fan. And you have the DH-17 blasters, which obviously could have come from Pablo, Lord Advisor, anyone on staff. But it was really interesting to see the part of the future Rebel Alliance, particularly Cassian and Melshi, walk around with weapons we've grown up with associated with the Rebels. I thought whether super intentional or accidental or not, it was really effective for me.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really powerful. I thought it was a great sort of like, yes, obviously, as we're just talking about, maybe some kind of wink, wink, nod, nod Star Wars connections can get to be too much and can get to be distracting. But I think they're often rich if you allow yourself to invest, right? Because it is powerful to see this moment of rebellion and to see the oppressed literally take the weapons of their oppressors, which ties into what Luthen is saying is, unfortunately, we have to use the machinery of our enemy to destroy our enemy. And here they are literally taking their blasters away from them. But those do have a significance in Star Wars. If you've been a longtime fan of, those are the first weapons of freedom you saw in the hands of rebels, bravely trying to stand up to the terror of stormtroopers and Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader, right? So there is that. But then there's also this great, like, Andor, the show being more interested in this kind of gritty level of realism of like, yeah, we can probably as fans sometimes, I think, look at things in Star Wars like tech too much from only our point of view as an audience, right? Yeah. We saw those blasters Rebels have them. So those are Rebel blasters, right? And this is almost a more real world approach of like, these are blasters that are floating around the galaxy. Sometimes they were issued to Imperials and the Rebels got a hold of them, and that's their stock weapon now because they were the ones that are accessible for whatever reason. Yeah. And that's almost even more interesting because it's more grounded of like, it isn't a video game. You don't hit X and therefore you get a DH-17. They're floating around the galaxy and they ended up in Rebel hands.
Well, what I had this thought too of like maybe some of them emerge, from Narkina 5 with them, and eventually join the Dodonna's crew on Yavin 4, and everyone's, or Alderaan. They're actually Alderaan. The Alderaan guard has them, right? I do hope, and just everyone's like, well, these are kind of cheap and easy to get. Okay, let's go with these ones.
Here's what I want to have happen, which I think I say this as a joke because it would infuriate people. What if at the end of the first season of Andor, as a little post-credit scene, Kino washes up on a beach, having floated to safety on top of a massive box of DH-17 blasters, and then he pats it and he says, I hope these will come in handy someday.
Yeah, that's it. And credits. Yeah.
I don't think people would enjoy that.
No, Nick Fury shows up and says, I'm building an alliance.
Yeah, this is not canon, I guess. I guess this is Kino canon.
Yeah.
We talked on our news show this week about the, same actor portrayed Snoke.
Mhm.
We talked all through that, so we don't necessarily need to revisit that. But do you feel like this was a light touch on Kino's death? Do you feel he's done as a character? Do you feel he was he either jumped and didn't make it, or he was captured? And what do you feel is Kino's fate?
I really want to discuss this. Actually, I'm glad I was going to bring this up at some point. First of all, this was what kind of was spoiled for me. I don't know who this Jake of Jake's Takes was. I'm picking on him. I'm so sorry, but his interview with Circus absolutely just said this was the ending, like in a roundabout sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know, and I just calm yourself, man. Just do an interview. Are you Snoke or not? And don't. And plus, I didn't like some of the tone. Anyways, different thing. So I knew
Jake asks him about where the character is going to pop up in the future, right? And Andy Serkis is just like trying his best as a good actor to not go nowhere.
Don't tell me. Yeah,
he's a great actor, but any answer, right? Even raising an eyebrow risks being like, no, he dies next episode.
The context was, this is why I was upset up top, and still upset, clearly. I've seen episode 10 and I don't want to say anything, but I have a question of will we see your character or not? And so I'm right there. I'm like, cool. We don't know what happens to him.
Got it. So that's exactly how you're spoiled, is it wasn't definitive.
I wasn't spoiled. If he had said, it's a shame you died, or will you show up again? Even then I'd know he died or he lived. But the way it was phrased and the way Circus is like in his eyes going, dude, come on. Was this like, again, I don't care that you had access to episode 10. I have it too. It's part of the job. Act like you've been there and let us all have the joy too when we get there. I'm a man of the people, me and John Fetterman. I'm a man of the people here. Put my hoodie on. I was really upset. and so it kind of ruined a little bit of the end, and it not ruined it where I threw everything, flipped my table of food and ran off. I just was like, I kind of saw that coming. Because there was a line of, I don't know about you all, but I think I'm already dead, or whatever Kino says earlier. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe he dies. That seems like a setting you up for he dies. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful ending, by the way, and I do want to talk theories about that in a second. It's a beautiful ending, but I was just like, oh, man, that's a spoil that didn't have to happen. Stop that.
Yeah, I missed the detail in that interview that Jake of Jake's Takes had seen episode 10. Yeah. And was able to say, I'm so glad I didn't know that going into watching it, that his fate was left open, that Kino Loy's fate was left open to interpretation. Because my expectation going in was that he was going to very definitively die in this episode. Yeah. My only question is, will he die in such a way that scars his head? It makes people think that he might contribute to any Snoke theories. We even got a very nice tweet about it of like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, we got a tweet about it of like, and apologies, I don't have the Twitter handle right in front of me. The idea that, hey, yeah, maybe he's a random prisoner who gets taken in, and they use his DNA at some point as a basis. Like, it's one of those things of like, sure, if it works for the story, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a fun let's speculate thing, Yeah. But I don't think it's the agenda of Andor to explain.
Yeah. Actually, no, I had the tweet up there. It's Gareth Bartlett's a great documentary filmmaker. And he said, he says, totally agree with us. Well, we don't need all of you to agree with us. But he says, however, given that episode 10 development, could I totally see Kino being tortured for his part and being used as an experiment that concludes the creation of Snoke clones? Madness? ? No, I don't necessarily think that's madness, because that stuff is fun. I think that's the spirit that we love to keep around here too. So no, I'm with you, Gareth.
I don't think that's madness, and I think it could be headcanon if people want. I just don't think the actual show Andor is concerned about that, Yeah. Whereas the Mandoverse is, right, of showing some of the building blocks to the development of the Snoke clone.
Yeah.
So that's very fascinating. And maybe even Bad Batch. Fun. If you live for Snoke theories, there's some crumbs. There's some crumbs to find out there.
Yeah.
So going to Kino Loy's fate, blissfully made it through this episode without being violently scarred on the top of his head.
Yeah.
For me, I thought it was so beautiful, and it was so bitter sweet. He almost had like a little kind of like ironic smile about it, right?
He does on one of the shots. Yeah.
Yeah, right at the end, right? And the speech he gives, the morning of the day they're going to free themselves, saying, the way I'm looking at it, I'm already dead.
Mm-hmm.
So anything I do is bonus to fight back, right?
Yeah. House money.
And his journey, what's that?
House money, playing with house money.
House money, yeah. And his journey reflects a little bit of what Luthen is talking about, right? Of like,
yes,
sometimes you build the infrastructure for other people's freedom. Sometimes you just make something better for the next generation or for the next day, but you don't get to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that's almost what I think is going on in his bittersweet, smile, right? Did he grow up on Jakku or Tatooine or some desert planet we've never heard of, right?
Yeah.
Or did he grow up on some beautiful green verdant planet that has no swimmable water?
Yeah.
And just the irony of like, I escaped all that. I pushed past my fear and I inspired these people, and everybody else is getting this freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But because this dumb quirk of fate, I can't do this simple thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's heartbreaking and beautiful in an incredibly heartbreaking way.
Yeah, very heartbreaking, and I loved it. It's one of my favorite little beats in the show, not just this episode, but the show so far. And there's a lot of emotions, and I don't think it's that little kind of like ironic smirk. It's almost off camera. So you're kind of almost looking at Cassian when he does that. So it's played. You might miss it being played, but I think it's all of it. And I do have some headcanon. First of all, I have some thoughts. Take one of those blasters. There's got to be a shuttle off this place. You might have some time. Go do that. That'd be my like, oh man, that doesn't fit the themes. I'll just say, here's what I think happens. I think he jumps. I think he dies. I think he drowns. And that's my thought. It's sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of keeping in line with what you're talking about. It's downright biblical. You led us to the promised land, but you're not going in. It is that. That's the way I look, now I'd love to be wrong. And I loved about episode 6 in season 2, Cassian turns a corner and he's in a fight and there's Kino going, I got your back. Like, that'd be great. It'd be great.
This is just a banner day for Moses comparisons. Again, I'm hearing them about Star Wars and about actual political leaders in our real world right now. Like, not joking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think, I don't know. I think for myself, hope is a good thing. I think sometimes I need to watch myself that I don't veer into any toxic positivity with my hope, because I've done that every once in a while in real life, where somebody just wants to tell me that they're hurting and that it's a bad thing, and my instinct is like, yeah, but tomorrow. And sometimes they're like, no, I just want to feel bad right now.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be aware of that for myself,
and that's more the true. That's the true definition of toxic positivity, I think.
Yeah, and it's never to dismiss anybody's pain. It's just want to hope that there's always another way to fight. There's always another way to go. There's always another choice. We're not boxed in, And so I just want to keep thinking about like, yeah, but okay, what's really going on in that prison? All the Imperials are cowering. So could he just hide? And then when, reinforcements inevitably come, could he, get their ship? Because it seems like the ships come there. There aren't ships stationed there. Ships come in with prisoners. And could he wait for the next one, or could he go with a blaster and force an Imperial to call? And like, I'm having all these like action hero hope moments of there's got to be a way out, right?
Yeah.
But everything about this show feels like the story is he made hope for everybody else.
Yeah.
He made freedom for everybody else, and he's not getting it today.
Yeah. It's a downer, right? It's a downer. Again, I want to be wrong. I can't wait for that reunion in season 2, episode 6.
I would be thrilled to be wrong.
Cassian, go get in the ship. Sergeant Loy is flying. Sergeant Loy? Hey, Cassian. Yeah. Wait, your name's Cassian? I thought it was Keith. Nah, it's Cassian. Yeah. Great.
Keith Gurgo, if I ever forget the name of anyone in the Rolling Stones, I'm just going to say, is it Keith Gurgo? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
All right. I think that's about it for canon. So we're going to move on to action. This is one of the staples of the Andor series, that it's tension, and then explosions of action. Maybe that'll be different in these last 2 big episodes. But did you have favorite action moments in this episode?
I had the longest list yet, right? Since probably episode 6 and 3. That's how the show's kind of working. I get that. I had a lot, man. I had a lot. And first of all, I'll start with one of my, I guess, almost trademark non-action action moments. Mon turning down Davo, with whether or not she's still mulling it over or contemplating or whatever's going on in heart and soul. The fact that she right away is like, absolutely not, get the F out, buddy. That's action for me.
Yeah, no, that's solid. That is a great moment. For the explosion of pew pew pews. Man, I really liked that it was big Star Wars action, but it also felt real and messy, right? And in Star Wars always kind of slides the scale on how much of the action is sort of like fun fantasy. Don't worry, your heroes are not going to be wounded, or you're certainly not going to die. Maybe wounded, but it'll be a flesh wound. There are times where Star Wars wants to remind you the stakes of the action, and it's a little bit more brutal. The Clone Wars animated series does that. There's some brutal deaths, right?
Yeah.
In kind of action where it's like, this is sad. And then there's a come action like this is a fun, jaunty pulp adventure action.
Yeah. The playground, the playground action.
The playground action. Yeah. And I mean, that in our big lightsaber duels conversation, we did a long series of episodes deep diving on every lightsaber fight. And part of what I love about Rey and Kylo in Rise of Skywalker is it's empty and it's cold and it is kind of thrilling, but it's so pointless, right? So Star Wars can go a lot of places with the way it depicts action. And I like that this was it was kind of energetic. There was hope to it. There was sort of a righteousness to it, but it was also like messy and scary, right? For both sides, right? And that really informed it and made it sort of like emotionally thrilling. So within that, some of the beats that I loved is Cassian's leg attack on the guards, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
It shows his character, right? That he's assessing things and he's got the smarter approach to the guards than the safer, approach, the win the day and walk away approach. And it's also just like in terms of just liking the action moments, I like how many just kind of like leg or lower body attacks there are in Rogue One. So it felt like here's the classic Rogue One action.
Love that.
Sweep the leg, the punch. As much as Cassian is pitched as a character who has great empathy and compassion, he's also a character who's like, when my back's up against the wall, I kill. Period.
Yeah.
And that that turnaround, that almost kind of cool action movie, almost of like, I don't even think about it. I see you trying to get up and you're done.
Yeah. And there's the key moments of him keeping a couple of them alive and that. Yeah. And that's kind of the messy nature of the fight. I agree with that. And the entire sequence had that too.
Yeah. And then there's, I have no idea if it's purposeful or not. It's not lingered on, but right after they take those two guards out and everybody's surging up there and Cassian shoots the person at the first control board. We cut very briefly to Cassian, a straight on shot of Cassian holding the blaster out. And it's like classic promotional original trilogy, Han, Luke, Leia, hero with the blaster pointing at the camera. It's just for a second, but it's like, it was this great sort of merging of the more rugged, real, scary Rogue One with the hero making a difference.
It's still Star Wars.
It's a hero's pose.
Yeah, and this really was, it was the most Star Wars of the episodes so far for a lot of reasons to me. But a lot of it was not just that there was action, but the way it was shot and framed, I think, for me.
Yeah. And then my final one, and I'll kick it back to you to hear your favorite beats, is anybody who's listened to any of our Clone Wars reports in particular is, hey, I love anyone falling from a high place. That you want to make any action thing better, put it at a high place. Put it somewhere where somebody can fall. One of the great secrets of Star Wars, lots of places to fall from. So not only just getting to see a guard pitch over the rail, and it's it's awkward and brutal and painful, but it's also just this great moment for those prisoners to see something's happening, right? You're like, that room doesn't seem to be necessarily aware. I can't remember if that's the same room that's had the water dripping, but people are just kind of like, trapped in this horror. And then suddenly, blaster fire. Yeah. Your oppressor flops from a high place to the ground. Some guy named Ham yells, "One way out." thrilling.
I'm with you on that. I put that down as the guard being shot over the railing was very Western, like a Knott's Berry stunt show, Knott's Berry Farm stunt show, and a show that is doing its own thing, is also a spy thriller and all this thing. That was not only Star Wars, it was like, oh, Star Wars is doing the Western thing again. I loved it, and I think of again, this sequence is really amazing. The whole jailbreak, the build up, everything about it from the start of the episode to when it happens. And that great shot of the station, which by the way is just one of many, right? But the station, and you got the three sides of prisoners swimming away. Great shot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I really loved the other prisoners seeing it, whether it's the water leaking down, the guy being blasted over, the window being shot out. I don't know. That kind of got me almost emotional and inspired. Like these actions. Are inspiring, and going back to even what remember Cassian's kind of like, I just did it. It's just a heist. No, you've inspired me. You. I don't know it's you, but you've inspired Marvin to be rebel again. You've inspired me, and it's like here's some inspirational action.
Yeah, I think it was just really, really well framed to make audiences feel that, right? Because we get to go on the journey with Kino and Cassian and the other main instigator with Cassian, Burnock, who sadly doesn't make it. See these people who are all in, know the stakes, can take a deep breath before they do it, and that's one journey. But there is something powerful of imagine yourself being in a place like that, being beaten down by the repetition, and then to suddenly have that shocking moment of change. Of hope, right? That you don't know is building. You can't see coming. You didn't even know to hope for it. It's like when you're in a dark place and you suddenly get that message from somebody where something's changed. A job offer, a personal thing, right? That just suddenly like explodes your gray world into something hopeful again. That was powerful about those moments.
I love that. Yeah, love that.
Yeah, absolutely great. Any other action moments for you?
Yeah, a couple jump out. You mentioned the casting stuff's great. Hey, I want to highlight again Burnock. True believer, rest in peace, and dies very unceremoniously, but that's kind of how it goes. And look, you're so right to say there's sometimes the heroic stuff in Star Wars, and then there's the rebel Alderanian guards getting blasted by stormtroopers in the opening seconds of New Hope. No one gets a funeral there. Like it's Star Wars plays both sides, and Burnock being a true believer from the beginning. Once you meet him, he's just like with Andor. See, I told you. 2 guards. We go now. Do you believe me now? And to have him not to experience it, but is also one of the characters that builds that others are climbing up from. Love that little moment. Melshi, Ruskat Melshi, man. I love this guy. I love him being part of the show. And firing and moving around that hallway like a rebel, man. This is going to be a sergeant of the Rebel Alliance. I love that there. In that sequence, there's 2 times Andy Serkis yells attack. The second time is legendary to me. Serkis, of course, it's up there with my precious. It's up there with him as King Kong. It's up there with him, Ape Stronger Together. Any of those big moments in his wonderful career. The first one's an attack, but when he realizes the floor is not hot and he looks up, oh God, that's a great hero moment. Attack, love it. I'm gonna watch that and repeat.
Yeah, no, I'm getting chills just hearing you talk about it. Right, that's like the moment where he truly believes, right? And it's just like the beast has been unleashed.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Prisoners stronger together. Yeah.
And the final one I want to put in there, actually, it's one of those non-action moments, but Luthen closing the elevator door on old Lonnie there at the end. He opens it, but then at the end, he's just like, cool, we're done here. I was like, that's some
He's
action.
got tech for everything. I was so invested in his speech, I didn't really appreciate that moment. And that was pretty damn funny. Like, I've poured my soul out and I know how you respond. Okay, bye. Yeah. That's a great transition into comedy and whimsy. This is not an episode with as many jokes, but there was some fun stuff. It's so weird. It's so depressing, but there's a little bit of Star Wars whimsy and fun in it. I noticed that the stretcher that poor Olaf is being carried through, Olaf's body at the beginning, has a little droid head moving around, and that just delighted me. It's the great classic Star Wars is just sometimes weird and defies logic of why does that stretcher need to be a droid that's aware that probably has a name and opinions.
Love that.
I love that. That was great. A couple other, I only have two other moments, but I want to see what you got. See if they're the same moments. So where do you go?
I have, oh God, what is this? I wrote one down. I don't even remember the one, but I love the when they go into the control room and tell them to do something, and then the guy says that could mean so many things, and then boom, they kill the other guy, and the other one's like, I'll do it. Just some dark comedy there. And then I wrote down, is that the best you got? And I don't remember that's a moment. I just might be. I can't remember that. Anyway, so that's.
That's Cassian when Kino's trying to be
Thank you.
The voice of inspiration, and Cassian's like this aggressive swim coach, or like really.
That's the one. That's the
best you got.
Because he's also speaking into tech that we've kind of associated with Han Solo's. We're fine. We're all fine here now.
Yeah.
And to have that, just to have it was more. Excuse me. Kino Loy has not had time in the shower, in the communal shower, to practice this speech. And
nope.
To have Cassian be like, come on, it's like a stand-up comic. Is that all you got? Let's really hear it for your own. I loved it.
Keep it going.
Keep it going. I said, keep it going. You could do better. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a nice bit of I guess comedy and inspiration. Yeah. Kino does say turn it off.
Yes.
and try and divide time. The 20-something who works at Dairy Queen says that could mean so many things. It's like, yeah. The only other moment for me that was comedy or whimsy is when Clea is telling Luthen that they got this message from what turns out to be Lonnie, and Clea saying, "I don't like the timing," and Luthen going, "You don't like anything."
Yeah. She's she's interesting. I want to know more of her character, because like I said before, I really like her. I don't know if I fully trust her for I don't even know what that means when I say that. I'm just like, she's very interesting to me.
I think for me, she from what we've seen so far, she feels like a character who's maybe lost her soul to the cause, right?
Yeah.
That she is sort of, her speech to Vel about all these sacrifices don't matter, and Cassian's a loose end and we got to kill him, and it was all, it's stuff that Luthen's agreeing to, but Clea seems to have no reservation. And then every time she talks to Luthen, she doesn't ever want to trust anyone. She doesn't ever want Luthen to take this risk. It's all about what Luthen shouldn't do, or Luthen should stop doing. It's all very, it could be seen as cautious, but it's also just fear radiates off her. Always with you, it cannot be done radiates off her,
Yeah, because I don't think she's going to be revealed to be a spy or anything. And the Lonnie reveal was great for me, by the way. I hadn't really tracked that till this episode, so I'm curious to go back and watch him a little more closely. But it's not so much that. It's it's like what you're saying. Like, what? There's something different going on. Like, I still don't trust Lita. I still think she's going to mess some things up, but for different reasons, not the Empire. Mother and daughter.
No, I mean, I think that's a fascinating thread. I mean, we can get into our jump ahead to our predictions a little bit here if we want. That this idea of, obviously this whole thing is about the battle of the rebellion against the Empire, but it's how do individuals come to that cause? And we've got characters who are focused on the cause, and they've got characters who are focused on the cause, but they care about the people too, or Cassian, who only cares about the people. But that makes it really interesting to me of is that almost a game that the show is playing with the audience, where we have our eyes on the big cause, the big battle, and some of the fates of these characters are going to come from the personal in a way they're not seeing, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about, and I'm sure other people have talked about, is Mothma going to pull everything off, but then Lita, turns her in, or not turns her in, but Lita causes some great crisis because she's mad at her mom and thinks her mom doesn't love her cool dad. And it's the personal that gets her, not her rebellion activities. And in that same way, a part of me is wondering, is this a possibility of the personal is going to get Dedra, right? Dedra seems to be on this sort of she and Luthen are both kind of working at things from different angles. They're playing this chess game without even, now Luthen knows her name. She doesn't know his, right? And we're all really focused on that. And how is she going to rise in the rebellion? And is she going to just get stabbed in an alley by Cyril because she rejected him, and is her fate going to be the personal rather than the big battle, the cause, the ideology?
It's That's grim in a good way. I mean, not in real life. Not in a real life.
It's real
way,
grim, but like,
yeah.
That's deeply fascinating, disturbing scene of Cyril full on stalking her is going somewhere. You know?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. Watched it again last night. It was like, this isn't just a funny little anti-rom-com. It's something.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to?
No. We got it all in this very short, concise episode.
I also the only thing that I wanted to mention is in the brief scene that we see on Ferrix. You know, we got some great things being set up there. But I noticed on my viewing this morning with the headphones in that there's some tones going on in the background, which either the time grapplers still grappling in the background on Ferrix, or the Imperials have appointed their own time grappler. But Time Grappler is one of my favorite characters in the trailer in those first couple episodes. I hope that the Time Grappler is the one character of Andor who survives all the way through, and I hope the Time Grappler is at the Battle of Andor.
Oh, yes, and I hope he carries those time hammers, whatever you're going to call them, and I hope he uses them on a couple stormtroopers on Ferrix. Absolutely, and then takes them to Endor, and that's what he's known for.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. Do you have any other predictions or hopes for the final two episodes we're heading into?
Yeah, I do think all roads lead to Ferrix, or at least some of the roads lead to Ferrix, and a lot of things kind of syncing up there. The ominous kind of vibes around Marva. Some stuff we've seen in trailers. We know we got to go back there in some degree, but Pac. I worry about his future, obviously, and he's pretty much already gone. If you listen to the Imperial from last week. Mm-hmm. And if he's hanged in the town square, does that inspire some big time action in that community? Is kind of where I think we're going. Educated guess, perhaps, but then we'll see. There's so many loose ends heading back to where it all began.
Yeah, no, you're right. There are some shots I'm remembering now from the trailer that we have not seen yet, but also without those, it feels like everything is heading back toward Ferrix. To paraphrase Darth Vader, I think one of the big things that is happening is Cassian does not yet realize his importance, right?
Yes.
Cassian has no idea that, Luthen and Miro are haunting him. And we were reminded, the audience, by having both Cinta and Miro's agent Corv staring at Martha's house this episode. And, I can definitely see Cassian being like, okay, I was wrong to run away. I gotta go get Marva, for sure. Mm-hmm. And, ending up in the heart of this battle for Ferrix. I also feel like, Luthen set it in motion that he was feeling frightened, that he'd exposed himself too much by, let Cassian see too much, taking him on the Fondor, his ship. And I thought the interesting sort of cliffhanger of this episode is going right from Luthen saying, the rebellion needs heroes, to a shot of, future heroes of the rebellion, Andor and Melshi.
Yeah.
That also makes me feel like we are heading toward, Luthen is hardcore, right? And he's willing to make sacrifices even though they hurt his soul. Is he heading toward this, this demand to spare Cassian's life that is going to put him at odds with Cinta and Clea, of saying, he's the hero we need, and are they going to think Luthen is going soft?
That's a great point too. A great point to highlight some of the stuff that's already been said and why Cassian is being hunted by the good side. It's to eliminate him. It's to end the trace.
Yeah, right now it's not to find him and give him a medal and promote him and a pat on the back. It's to take him out, and that's obviously not. I don't think where Luthen's going.
Yeah. Again, to highlight it, to take him out for the cause.
Yep.
So when you got your thoughts about the cause and what you're sacrificing for it, factor that in. And that's why, again, I want to see Luthen on the Fondor after that moment. Great speech. Wonderful points. Accurate. Great stuff. What do you really think when you're all faced with it?
And that might be an interesting thematic thing too. And I'm speculating responsibly in such a way that if stuff like this doesn't happen, I'll go, oh, I was wrong. Okay. And I'll enjoy what's there. But if Luthen, justifies, he finds out in his network, Cassian broke out of this prison and took almost 5,000 people with him and bloodied the Empire's nose again. He's too valuable. He's got to stay alive, right? He could have this great justification of I'm doing this for the cause. And then the shot alone on Fondor could be like, thank God I didn't have to kill this good man, right?
Yeah.
And will that challenge Luthen's, declaration that he's stone cold and he knows what he's doing?
Yeah. I'm curious about it. Again, predictions, speculate responsibly, questions that maybe don't have concrete answers yet. And that's why it's great. That's why we're all here. But big stuff to think about.
Yeah. And the other two questions that don't need to get into any sort of predictions, but I'm very curious to see if Luthen makes it out of season 1. And I'm very curious what the best case scenario for Ferrix is, right? Because obviously, as the audience, we want rebellion, right? But it's not like they're going to, at the end of the episode, they'll sign a treaty and it will be the free city of Ferrix. Free planet of Ferrix is not going to happen. So what's the best case scenario for rebellion on Ferrix?
Yeah. Fantastic.
All right, we're going to wrap up with some fun stuff. I skipped over it, but I want to go back for it. Did you have a favorite Luthen line or noise in this episode?
Well, that whole speech was spectacular, a masterclass in acting, absolutely. But in that had my favorite new line from Luthen. Axis. Great line.
Yep. Oh, yeah, and that's great, his playing of like, no, we didn't have anything to do with Aldani.
We're invited.
Got an Evite. Answered maybe. Yeah. In the mix of his great confrontation discussion with Lonnie, I already screenshot it, and I will be deploying it at different times on social media, I'm sure. I love it when he says, your investment in the rebellion is epic.
That's great.
And the changing tone of that word epic is pretty great. All right, we always end with the fun question of what merch would you want based on this episode? What do you got from this thrilling but brutal episode of Andor?
Man, it's tough to say. I really wouldn't mind we get some Kino Loy swimming floaties, just for hope, for a sense of hope. Might be there as well. It's maybe a new release DH-17 replica.
I do want a Kino Loy action figure, to just celebrate the character.
He already put it out there today, but our good pal Brian Ward put the Keith Gergo hands behind his head Funko Pop in prison gear. Come on, Funko, be brave and do it.
They got Squid Game Funko.
Yeah,
I think they can do on program Cassian.
Yeah,
I don't think I'll do that one myself. But,
yeah. I mean, the moment they released a Ned Stark with severed head covered in blood, the game was changed for Funko. So
yeah. I'm stopping myself from listing other questionable Funkos. The stretcher droid. It's so weird. That I would love a stretcher droid action figure and be like, it fits most characters can lay on stretcher droid.
Yeah.
That would be great. But my thing I truly want is I want a Luthen plushie with a dark billowing cape, and you can squeeze the Luthen plushie, and it just yells the word, everything.
Yes, please.
All right, that is our big look at episode 10 of Andor One Way Out. Ken, where can people find us?
You can find us on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram and YouTube as well. You want to subscribe over there? We got some stuff cooking for 2023 and even sooner. Some more live Q&As. So join us over there as well. You can also listen to the podcast in a lot of spots: Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Just search. You'll find us some merch available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. And you can also find us on Facebook, by the way, too. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. From there, you can get into our Discord and discuss Star Wars, including what Funko Pops you want. Every day was Force Center, friends. You can follow me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com, for more information on things I do, stand-up comedy dates, my book. I'm going to be sending personalized copies if you want, and selling those from my website for the holiday season, and a lot more. Just find me there. Joseph, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Mastodon. I'll memorize how to tell people how to find me on Mastodon, but I'm going to be there. And for now, I'm going to stay on Twitter as well, as it is changing by the second. I'm sure while we were recording, there were 5 different changes to how check marks are going to work. So I'm going to ride that out on Twitter if you want to join me there and see what becomes of Twitter. You can also check out some of the short films and the comedy sketches I'm making and putting up on my YouTube channel. You can go to YouTube and search Joseph Scrimshaw. Thank you again to everyone who has supported the short that I made, that Ken is in, that Marcellus is in, called Peace Fight. If you haven't checked that out, go check that one out. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for Davos Scumbag, this has been the Andor Report.